Welcome to the Best Little Town Podcast, your go-to source for everything happening in the town of Bedford's local government. Whether it's new initiatives or important decisions shaping our town's future, you'll hear it right here. This podcast is dedicated to keeping our residents informed and engaged.
Hello, and welcome to the Best Little Town Podcast. It's Wednesday, September 25th, 2024. I am Bart Warner, Bedford Town Manager. It's my privilege to bring information to you in this podcast, which the town provides in cooperation with our partners at Media Squatch. And of course, since it's Wednesday morning and I'm recording this podcast, that means that there was a council meeting last night, and the primary purpose of this show is to pass along information that was discussed. And beginning with the published agenda, I will note that we began with my report to Town Council. I noted that October 7th through 11th is our fall cleanup week. That is when residents who pay for solid waste service can put out, well, frankly, all manner of things, largely bulk goods and things that may not ordinarily fit in your rollout container, out at the curb on your regular collection day, and public works staff will pick that up. Note that the items should be out the week of October 7th, 11th on your regular pickup day. Given the volume of things we typically handle, sometimes we run a little bit behind, but that's the schedule that we ask people to observe. We also request that you don't put things out any earlier than the week before, just for appearances of clutter and things like that. Also thanked and congratulated Heather Alto and her colleagues at the Central Virginia Business Coalition for a very fun-filled and successful Centerfest event, which took place this past Saturday in downtown Bedford. Last night, Pastor Dave Metz appeared before council. He is the pastor of the Church of God on East Main Street. He offered some scripture, specifically Matthew chapter 6, verse 33. Can't read my own handwriting. And also offered a word of prayer in support for town council and the community. Council member comments. Councilman Todd Foreman noted that the Central Community Health Assessment is underway. This is a regular practice from that foundation that solicits public input about issues of health and wellness in our community that affect citizens. They will be having a meeting on September 27th, and Councilman Foreman mentioned that. Councilman Bruce Johansson is our representative on the Central Virginia Planning District Commission. He reported from that meeting, which took place last week, that the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation will be submitting an informational report soon. The Central Virginia Commuter Assistance Study is underway. That is a targeted project looking at ways that people can practice some things such as rideshare to eliminate traffic on the road and perhaps some personal frustrations with that traffic. He also said that the Central Virginia Planning District talked about the fact that several electric vehicle charging stations are being installed, and there is more research being done on that at the regional level. Vice Mayor C.G. Stanley noted that he was out of town last week, but was continuing to work. In fact, he took a phone call from our electric director, John Wagner, while he was on the beach, which we appreciate his diligent service there. He noted that Centerfest was a great success, and he extended thanks to town employees and staff who were also involved in the execution of that event. Councilman Stacey Haley spoke about the Chamber of Commerce annual banquet, which occurred about a week or two ago, noted that was also a great event, also commented on the fact that Centerfest went well, and he also passed along his recognition of the town employees who were involved. Councilman Bob Carson thanked Pastor Metz for his prayer for council. In fact, all members of council did note that in their appreciation of it. He noted that on Saturday the 28th, there will be the formal dedication of the Beulah Payne Memorial Park on Edmond Street. That will begin at 11 o'clock a.m. There will be a formal program related to that beginning at 1 o'clock p.m. Councilman Darrell Updike shared his personal insight of Centerfest, namely that his wife had a booth in the event, and that was apparently very successful for her. So that aspect of the event was also important and noted by council. Mayor Tim Black concluded council comments by also commenting on the fact that the Chamber of Commerce Gala was a great event. He also mentioned that the town is currently reviewing its comprehensive plan, and as part of that, we are soliciting public input. There is a dedicated website set up for that project. That address is www.bedford2045.com. That's Bedford 2045. If you want to check out that site for information about that process, also if you'd like to participate in the interactive survey that's posted there, we would certainly welcome your participation. Tim Black noted that he and Darrell Updike also attended the previous night's Board of Supervisors meeting in conjunction to a joint proclamation of our two boards that we would cover later in the agenda for last night's meeting. We did have a couple of additions to the agenda. I'm getting ahead of myself, though. There was also a Public Safety Committee meeting prior to the council meeting. There were several items discussed there, one of which was the possibility of the fire department recuperating some of its costs for calls. We also discussed some speeding concerns in general, and the committee recommended that the town implement a 35 mile per hour speed limit on 221 in the newly annexed area. That took place about a year ago. And we did have a citizen come to the previous council meeting to talk about that. There is a recommended change to reduce the speed limit from approximately the civic sign in front of Redco to the new town limits at the river that are currently 45 miles per hour, reducing that to 35 miles per hour. We also talked about speed limits within town and the Longwood Avenue corridor in that adjacent area, and the committee is recommending that we reduce the speed limit of 35 miles per hour on Longwood to 25 miles per hour. There is also a recommendation to reduce the speed limit on Oakwood Street that is currently 30 miles per hour to 25 miles per hour. This committee also talked about some of the recommendations of the public parking studies in Centertown and has directed staff to make a few changes in that area. Notably, we are going to be changing all of the parking spaces directly in front of the courthouse on East Main Street to handicap parking spaces. We are going to look at increasing the fines for parking enforcement and for violations there. And we'll continue to seek input on parking regulations there, but those were the primary outcomes of that discussion. Moving on to changes to the agenda, there were a few things added last night. One was a street closing request on Court Street, which was added, I'll speak to momentarily. In new business, we added a proclamation, which I'll also cover momentarily. And we did add a closed session to discuss some personnel matters related to the police department and information technology departments. There were no public hearings scheduled for last night. On the consent agenda were 3 items plus an additional item that was added. The first was approval of an event at Liberty Lake Park on November 2nd, which is a Saturday, from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. This would be a Bedford International Film Festival event in conjunction with Halloween, being sponsored by Laura Willoughby and her organization. That was unanimously approved. And again, that event is scheduled to take place November 2nd from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. at Liberty Lake Park. The next item was a request for a special event on the previous weekend, which would be October 27th, 2024. Jonathan Hayden is looking to sponsor a Halloween Town Trunk or Treat event at Liberty Lake Park. That will take place from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., and council unanimously approved that request as well. The next special event request came from the Bedford Family YMCA and their traditional 5K event taking place on the first weekend of December, the Peaks of Otter Christmas Classic Foot Race. That takes place on the series of roads affectionately known as the Loop, that's comprised of Peak Street, Whitfield Drive, Oakwood Street, and Longwood Avenue. They are proposing to once again hold the 5K foot race, which has been a very popular event, on Saturday, December 7th. The street closure will commence at 7:30 a.m. and will continue to 11 o'clock a.m. on that date. Ingress and egress will be provided for residents along the way. We do have police who staff that event, and we also make sure we provide access to Bedford Memorial Hospital, which is impacted by the route. Council also unanimously recommended approval of that special event request. The other item on the consent agenda was a street closure request from Owen Building and Remodeling, and this is a bit unusual. Owen Building is a Bedford-based company that does a lot of construction work. They are anticipating being awarded a contract by the Bedford County Board of Supervisors on October 14th for painting the bell tower on top of the courthouse. That project will require them to install and park a crane on Court Street between Main Street and Depot Street, and that project will likely take 8 to 10 days and possibly as much as 2 weeks. And so they wanted to go ahead and make council aware of that and ask for consideration to block Court Street between Main Street and Depot Street for up to 2 weeks in anticipation of that contract award from Bedford County. Once they receive formal notice from the Board of Supervisors, they will let us know the schedule for that, and we will do our best to get that information out to the public. Council did have a few questions about contingencies for weather and the duration of the street closing, and then also wanted to make sure that any apparatus there is secure on an overnight basis, and particularly if there were any weather events that might impact. And of course, they noted that in their ultimate approval of that request as well. Moving on to new business, we had a presentation from Mariel Fowler of the Central Virginia Planning District Commission, who presented information about the Central Virginia Safety Action Plan. This is a project that's been guided by the Central Virginia Planning District. It deals with a lot of things related primarily to traffic safety in the region, collecting data and suggestions as to how we can improve things and prevent accidents that cause certainly loss of life, but also injury and property. They're in the beginning phases of that project, and so Ms. Fowler was kind enough to give us a lot of information about that process. Again, if you weren't able to attend the meeting, we encourage you to watch the recording on YouTube, and if you can't come in person, we always invite you to watch our live stream, also provided by our partners with Media Squatch. She did note that there will be a meeting on October 2nd at 1 o'clock p.m. in the third floor meeting room of the County Administration Building to talk further about this safety action plan and also to solicit public comments. The next item of new business came from the electric department and related to a budget item, specifically a request to purchase transformers in anticipation of new residential development that is coming to town. Specifically, we know of a large for us, residential development between Independence and Lowry that should be coming on board within the next year or so. We are on the hook to provide electric service for that, and we want to make sure that that's ready as soon as the houses are ready. And so the electric department asked for council's approval to go ahead and appropriate $500,000 to purchase transformers to serve that development and make sure that they are ready once the houses are actually out of the ground. Council did vote to approve that unanimously at last night's meeting. Another item of new business was discussion of an electric rate study. Council sent out a request for proposals about a month or so ago for qualified firms to help us look at our electric rates and what we charge and some of our operational aspects of that utility from an outside agency. They interviewed 2 firms, and the committee recommended that we contract with Raftellus, which is a firm that's committed to assist us with this project. They approved that contract unanimously. We expect to engage them within the next month and hopefully get a thorough report back from them within about 6 months to give their independent private assessment of our electric operation and our electric rates. The next item of new business is a very special matter. It relates to a resolution in recognition of U.S. Marine Private First Class Morris Everett Kennedy. This was a joint resolution proposed by both the Bedford County Board of Supervisors and the Town Council, honoring the memory of Mr. Kennedy, who was the county's first casualty, we think, of World War II, and his name is attached to the local American Legion post. Councilman Darrell Updike, who is active in the Legion, was given the honor of reading the resolution out loud, identifying Mr. Kennedy's exploits and the special circumstances right now which relate to his giving his life for our country, being buried abroad in Guadalcanal, and after many, many years, his remains are going to be returned to his home soil here in Bedford County and will be interred Saturday, September 28th. And as part of that commemoration, American Legion personnel will be there to honor his memory and reflect this appropriately, and a copy of the resolution will be presented to the family at that event as well. The last item of new business in the open session was a proclamation honoring Julia Peters for her service as recording secretary to the town council. Some of you may not be aware, but Julia is the person who records all the notes from every council meeting and makes sure that they are sent out and posted and put out on our website and made available to anybody who wants a formal record of our events. It's not an easy job. It's quite a bit of work, but Julia has done a great job of doing it for the past 4 years for us. She has announced that she is retiring from the position to spend some more time with her family, but I think we were able to surprise her last night with a proclamation recognizing her service and wishing her well in her future endeavors. Again, we ended the meeting last night with a closed session where we talked about some personnel matters dealing with the police department and the information technology operations. As I began this episode of the podcast, maybe you heard it in the background, maybe you didn't, but the train rolled past, and that reminded me that it's a good time to kind of give an update on where we might be in terms of getting passenger rail service in Bedford. We have applied for a CRISI grant through the Department of Rail and Public Transportation, basically to help us answer that question. We expect to hear back about that grant application sometime in October. We won't know anything officially, of course, until we get that notification, but all indications I'm hearing from our discussions with state and federal personnel are that it's looking more and more likely that Bedford will be included with an Amtrak stop within the system. Although I think the direction we're going to receive is that there will be a local effort required to actually construct the physical platform related to that stop. And as part of that, and this is the grant we applied for, there will be a local match, and there will be a not insignificant cost associated with that the town and county have already talked about, but we may be reaching out to our neighboring jurisdictions and possibly even some private sector folks about funding that local match as well. So again, there's nothing official to report, but the obstacles to passenger rail service continue to be pushed aside. Basically, it's going to come down to a budget discussion probably in the near future, and we will look at ways that we can manage that cost appropriately. As always, we appreciate your attention to what's going on in town. We invite your direct participation, your questions, your comments, and your concerns and complaints as well. If there's ever anything on your mind, feel free to come to town council and sign up to speak. Those meetings are typically held on the second and fourth Tuesdays of every month, beginning at 7 o'clock p.m. in the council chambers upstairs at 215 East Main Street. Of course, you can stop by Town Hall anytime it's convenient for you. Our business hours are 8:30 to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Our direct number at the front desk is 540-587-6001. Or if you'd like to email somebody, please email me directly at bwarner@bedfordva.gov, and I'll be happy to do what I can to assist you with any questions you may have. As always, I appreciate your patience and your support. I feel very blessed and grateful to be a resident of Bedford myself and to enjoy the beauty of the area and the company of good neighbors. And until next time, I wish you good health, peace, and prosperity, and hope you will join us for our next podcast.